people, baby. You're making your nasal squeaking sounds because you want a nap. Is that right? Hello, BookTube. I've got a drowsy little baby bean on my hands. And welcome to your Daily Penguin. Our tour through my Penguin Classic wall and all of its nooks and crannies. Who knows what we'll find from day to day. I've been doing a shelf of somewhat miscellaneous stuff. There'll be a lot of miscellaneous stuff coming up. There are Penguin Galaxy hardcover reprint volumes of classics of science fiction and fantasy. There are Penguin hardcovers. There are Penguin Classic Deluxe editions. What we're doing today finishes off that shelf. So this is a Penguin Classic hardcover, much like we saw with Moby Dick. And this is David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. This was sent to me by Penguin. What's the matter? What's the matter? I want to see your fans again. They love you so much. They're not all that interested in Penguin Classics. They just like seeing you every day. That's all. They like seeing you every day. Because you have such a pretty face. Oh, I don't know if you can hear it from the microphone, but she is snorting. She's snorting and wheezing and sort of squeak popping a little, and those are always signs that she is ready to nap. But anyway, I didn't. My Basset Hound didn't have those signs. If Lucy was breathing, she was ready to nap. This dog makes elaborate notifications ahead of time. I'm told by Schnauzer people that that the endless energy that they have when they are young evens out, and that, like most dogs, they reach a point, what feels to a human overnight, where they are perfectly happy to just sleep all day long. I don't know. I can't imagine that in the Bean's case, but we shall see. Oh. I'm going to give her the nice pleasure of a nap and some unstructured time because she's getting a bath today. She hates that. Just hates it. She doesn't flail around in a help they're trying to kill me way like Lucy did, but she doesn't like it at all. But anyway, to get back to Penguin. Penguin sent me they very nicely sent me one of these hardcover classics of David Copperfield, and I have kept it. It's a brown thing. It's got an introduction. The introduction is I forget the person who does it. It is very good. Jeremy Tambling does the introduction, and it's very good, very thoughtful. Not canned introductions to this kind of book are a very good gig if you can get them, but so many of them are done so poorly, and this is not. There's a way to do canned introductions to books like this that will satisfy the company or the reprint house that is asking for it, and it doesn't require that way. You can do that in a way that doesn't require you to work very hard at all. And this is why you'll find great rafts of those kinds of things in the bibliographies of almost every 20th century author, and quite a few academics and scholars and whatnot. But this introduction doesn't phone things in. It does a very good job. And so I'm not faulting the introduction, and I'm not faulting the publisher for sending this to me. It was very nice of them. And I'm also not faulting the book. It's 1850, thereabouts, that Dickens wrote this, roughly in the middle of his career. I know that Dickens has fans. Lots of them. I know that he does. He is a byword for a great novelist. I have never seen it myself, and I've made no real bones about that on this channel. I have never seen that at all. To me, his characters are caricatures. His humor is arch but not pointed. It's energetic but not funny. His scene painting is done with such a heavy hand that it's like you're walking down the grade school, the row of grade school desks, and little Chucky is just covering one sheet of paper with dark purple, just rigorously mopping the whole thing with a cake of dark purple. And every once in a while, he's looking at you like, isn't this great? And, you know, you don't want to be mean. I have read all of Dickens. I occasionally dip back into to a Dickens novel now and again. Like I mentioned yesterday, I don't think I would ever read this volume, and that is giving me pause as to whether or not these big Penguin hardcovers should be kept. These big hardcover Penguin classics are not the same. There's a smaller version as well that we've seen. We've seen quite a few of them. And I think we have more to look at as well. And those are designed by Coralie Bickford Smith. I don't know if these are. Let me just check to make sure. I should know that. Yeah, these are as well. These are as well. The designs are, but I believe the execution is quite different. The smaller ones, it seems to me that the designs on their covers are more durable, that they're more baked into the cover. I don't really know the exact technical lingo for what I'm talking about, but you know what I mean. Some covers are like that, where the designs are part of the cover and there's nothing you can do about it. And others, especially the coloring in this case, I get the impression with these larger penguins that the white on the brown background here, that the white would just rub right off if I used it. And I do use my books. I'm hard on my books. I don't handle them with kid gloves. When there used to be an outside world to go and visit, I would stuff them into a bag, stuff them back out of a bag, on and off of public transportation, that sort of thing. So I don't have much use for a classic, a book of any kind that will fall apart under that kind of use. I don't have much use for such a thing. So I'm looking at something like this or Moby Dick, and I have quite a few others, and thinking, well, okay, they're pretty, and it's very nice of Penguin to send them to you. You know, they've got the built-in cloth bookmark and nice binding and nice bright white paper, but I'm not a collector. If I don't have books in my collection that I'm not going to use, that I can't use. I don't like to do that. Every once in a while, someone will send me a gift that's in terrible shape, and I will keep it because it doesn't take up much space and it feels wrong to get rid of it. But usually, that is the litmus test that I apply to every book that enters my collection is, can I use this as a book? Can I use it for its intended purposes? I don't want to use it for decoration. And that often fails for one reason or another. The book is cumbersome. The book is falling apart. The book is an edition that I don't like. And over the years, over the decades, many people who start to figure out, hey, he likes to read. They don't read. And over the years, many people of those kind have given me Dickens, because it's the first thing you go to, right? Dickens or Tolstoy. If you've got a friend that, oh, he's a reader. I don't know much about reading, but I hear this Dickens is good. I mean, everybody talks about Charles Dickens. So I've gotten editions of Dickens in one, elaborate form or another many times over the decades, and I get rid of them instantly. And sometimes, once or twice, that has caused problems. Once or twice, I have got rid of them at a used bookstore or a charity shop, and then the giver has wondered where it is. They've come to look at the shelves and seen that it's not there. And I don't mince words. I say, I really appreciated the gift. Of course, I was trying to spare your feelings, but I instantly disposed of it. It was a gift given to me because it was a book, not because it was a book I want. It was given to me with no examination of what I like and don't like. And I have a lot of books. As you can see, I have a lot of books. I have way too many books to be sequestering valuable shelf space in order to save people's feelings. So, which is kind of why that Everyman's Classic shelf there that I've built is so amazing, because I haven't had to spare any of your feelings. All of you have been sending these Everyman's Classic hardcover editions, and I haven't had to spare anybody's feelings because there hasn't been a dud in the bunch. That's kind of amazing to me. And a lot of you were also asking, I know this is off the subject of your Daily Penguin, a lot of you were also asking how hard it was to free up a shelf here in the Sanctum Sanctorum, here in the little book room, where every book is supposed to be pulling double its weight, and where it's supposed to work the agony of an hour to pick even one book to move off a shelf. It didn't turn out to be that hard. I didn't actually have to remove any books to do that. I just had to play a little book Jenga. But anyway, getting back to this book, I prefer virtually any other major Victorian novelist to this one. Plain and simple. I'm not anywhere near the Elizabeth Gaskell fan, for instance, that so many people are, including so many people on BookTube, but I would take her over Dickens any day of the week. George Eliot, even in her worst, most boring books, which the most boring of which I will not name in case a certain person is watching, oh, for whom it's their favorite book, but and of course Anthony Trollope. Everything you can see on the page, I think, everything that Dickens is trying to do. And to an Old Bailey hack such as myself, it seems pretty clear the main thing he was trying to do was fill pages. But even beyond that, when he was older, he could sometimes be tempted to talk about his artistic vision. When he was younger, he knew what kind of bosh that was. But when he was older, and was the talk of the whole world, he could be tempted to talk that way. But it's still nonsense. I don't see any of that in his books. And when I look on the page and see what he's trying to do, whatever it is, whether he's trying to engage pathos or write a long, detailed, satirical look at some aspect of society, or whether he's trying to be funny, God help us all, I think you can look at what he's trying to do on the page and immediately think of half a dozen Victorians who do it better. I think. If that's your opinion, well, you might be thinking, well, then why is he so venerated? Why does he have a full shelf of reprints from every reprint house in the world, and always has for 150 years? Why would that be true? And I believe it has to do with Dickens. I think he's the reason why. I think if you look at the whole length of enormous length of his career and his fame, you see that most of his effort in everything he did was designed to make that happen. So pumping his works constantly, in a way that I think, and also never stopping. He wrote an enormous amount of work, and that helps. that helps very much. That is, I think, those are a cornerstone of why we think of Shakespeare the way we do. And other Shakespeare scholars have said the same thing, that yes, his plays can be brilliant, but more of them are not brilliant than most people like to admit. And the reason why we study him in the enormous, excessive way that we do over all the other writers of his time is because he wrote so many plays. It's because we have so much of his work. We have so much to talk about. And Dickens, I think, knew that at heart, whether he thought about it in terms of Shakespeare or not. I think he knew that at heart, and looked at his work in a way very different from the normal kind of boilerplate that we use about the author and his inspiration. I think he looked at his work exactly the same way that Anthony Trollope did, as just making sausages. And that the minute that one string of sausages is coming close to ending, I had better start up another one, and I have them ready. Dispassionately, mechanically ready. And I think one of the main reasons why, if that is true for both Trollope and Dickens, one of the main reasons why we think of Dickens different than we think of Trollope is because Trollope wrote an autobiography in which he admitted it. And somehow his friends, or anybody who knew what he was doing or what he was about, or his editor, did not prevail upon him to burn it. So it got printed posthumously, and people could read it and say, oh. So I was investing all sorts of muse-like significance in these books when they were, to this author, nothing more than just manufacturing collars in an assembly line. I think if Dickens had had a flight of that kind of unwarranted honesty in an autobiography about his own writing process, I think we would see pretty much the same thing. He didn't do that. Instead, he pumped out all these books, and they are taught in schools, so they form an emotional kind of melancholy glowing spot in the minds of a lot of older readers, and they propagate that in younger readers, and the whole process doesn't, I think, have much to do with how satisfying the actual content of the books are. At least that's me. I could very well be wrong. This is a case in which I hesitate to say I could very well be wrong, because I have been revisiting this author for a long time, longer than most of you have been alive. I routinely make a journey up country into his works in an attempt to see the Dickens that glosses over the eyes of so many people when they think about him or talk about him. And I have yet to find that Dickens. But this is, so to speak, an open book. I have continued to try. So it's not like I'm groping around with this author. I'm not. I'm not groping around with him. I know his works fairly well. I just that whatever it is that makes people go all misty-eyed and weak in the knees about him has never happened to me. It's never even come close. So, your Penguin today, when we get to the recommendation part, well, it's dicey on a lot of different levels. I mean, these Penguin Classic hardcovers are lovely, but by the same token, I get the impression that their decorations won't stand up. So the book itself, this thing could last through a tank battle. It's as solid as a rock. But I think, I haven't tested this completely yet, but I think that with very little ordinary daily use, all of the illustrations on this thing would be gone. It would just be a brown hardcover. And unadorned brown hardcovers of Dickens are not hard to find. Let's put it that way. So on the actual Penguin Classic side, your recommendation is kind of ambivalent, and also on the side of the book. Unfortunately, regardless of the edition of the book, of course, you need to read some novels by Charles Dickens if you want to be well read, widely read. You have to read some Dickens. There's no way around that. You kind of do. I think I maintained that it was a somewhat fraudulent process that made that true, but it is nevertheless true. So David Copperfield, Oliver Twist are usually the two that you can choose from. They're painless to do, so I would advise it, so that at least you know what Dickens is about. And if you are if you turn out to do that, if you read Oliver Twist or David Copperfield and you feel the magic, you're suddenly swept up in the magic that this author obviously does exercise on a lot of readers, well, good for you. You've got a huge shelf of work ahead of you. And if not, well, then you'll know what Dickens is about. I think between a couple of novels like that, maybe A Christmas Carol, you will know what this author is about, and not have a pressing need to read everything else. I had an old friend who used to say, once they get to Dombey and Son, there's no hope. So I don't know where you would quantify the spot, but your Penguin Classic recommendation in terms just of the book itself is also a little ambivalent. I think the time spent in reading all 175 of Dickens's novels would be better spent reading all of Trollope, but maybe that's just a personal preference. Maybe after all this time and all the efforts that I have made to come back to this author and see his greatness, maybe that is still just a preference. I don't know. I find that hard to believe. There's hardly any author in the canon that I've examined more than this one. So I would like to think, since my book examining powers are not all that bad, I would like to think that if there were greatness here, I would have seen it by now. But who knows? Maybe I'll do a Dickens marathon next year, and I'll finally spot it. Who knows? You can count on one thing. If I decide at the end of this year or in the lucubrations and coming up to next year, if I decide that I'm going to do a multi-book Dickens read-along, you can rest assured of one thing. I'm going to drag you all along with me, because I'm not going to suffer through that myself. But anyway, in the meantime, that is our Penguin for today. Another Penguin Classic hardcover that I have my doubts about. I have David Copperfield in a normal black spine Penguin, I'm pretty sure. I think I have it in a Signet mass market paperback. I have it, of course, as the Project Gutenberg ebooks. So I'm not 100% sure that I need this. So I think this will go on a pile along with Moby Dick and a bunch of other stuff. It's just with these hardcover editions, with the other stuff, I would just donate to a charity. But these pretty hardcover editions, I can't help but think maybe one of you would want them. And I'm getting more and more signals from all and sundry about whether or not it's possible to go to the post office again, whether or not it's possible to mail things again. I haven't wanted to. The post office, everybody has masks on. They have partitions. They have guides on the floor for social distancing. I guess a lot of people aren't going to post offices, so it's probably possible to do and stay safe. We shall see. If that ends up being the case, I'm going to examine it in person next week. So, because Massachusetts is going into phase 1 next week, so we'll see. I will see what that is like, and if it is possible, I have a backlog of stuff to start sending out, and I will. If that's true, I will put up a trial balloon for these classics and things like them. See if any of you want them. If I don't, there's really no reason for me to have an ornate hardcover classic of Charles Dickens. There really isn't. I'm not willing to write him off. 40 Million Frenchmen can't be wrong, but nevertheless, I don't need more of Dickens than just the Penguin trade paperbacks. I certainly don't need this. So that is your Penguin for today. We'll hope for more enthusiastic fare tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.